Spider-Man, Spider-Man, friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, catches thieves just like flies. As he falls, look at guys. Hey guys, we're talking about the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Hey guys, we're here to talk about the new Spider-Man.
Spider-Man No Way Home.
No Way Home. But we're also going to talk about, now that this is, it's 2022
now, yeah.
It's the 20th anniversary of the original Spider-Man. I figured it'd be kind of time to talk about all Spider-Man movies and also Spider-Man TV shows and sort of Spider-Man things. So
all about Spider-Man.
All about Spider-Man. So Jay, what was your first sort of like introduction to Spider-Man?
I feel like my first introduction to Spider-Man was like being a little kid, sort of like flipping channels through TV, and I think it was like Cartoon Network Boomerang.
Okay.
I think it was the Amazing Spider-Man and his
Amazing Friends. Yes.
With like
okay.
the Iceman and.
I had a video. Actually, I had a video cassette of that video where they were introduced to the X-Men.
Okay.
And it talked about like Firestar's.
Oh yeah, Firestar. Because it wasn't. I always thought it was the Human Torch, but
no, it was the Firestar.
Firestar.
Or as Firestar, it was Spider-Man and Iceman.
Yeah, it's sort of a weird
combination. Yeah, but I remember the, and then do you remember the PSA?
No, they always have like PSAs?
No, they had, so on the video, they had a video of Spider-Man and his Amazing Friends on the video cassette, and the X-Men, the animated series that was a pilot that never went anywhere. That had like an Australian Wolverine.
Okay.
But anyway, they'd had this live action Spider-Man who was like, you need to go and register to vote. And I was listening to a podcast that was reviewing the X-Men show, and they were talking about how old do you think that we are? We have a Spider-Man that wants us to talk about, we're like 5 or 9, But yeah, and then and then the animated show, the '90s animated show,
it was 90s, kind of was
really great. Got got me interested in Spider-Man.
Was that your introduction to Spider-Man?
That was. I mean, I had the video for the Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, but I think that one, because that came out in '94, I was probably about 5. Well, let's see, 2001, I was 7. I was 7 at the time. So Spider-Man sort of hit me. That's when that Spider-Man came out. And, the Spider-Man film was actually in development hell for years. Because I think there was like some Japanese Spider-Man movies that were like live action Spider-Man.
They had like the rights or something?
Well, the rights. And then see what happened was, What happened was that Marvel was going bankrupt, so they sold all their properties to different studios. That's why Sony ended up having Spider-Man. 20th Century Fox got the X-Men and Fantastic Four, and I think New Line got Blade. Right. But anyway, there was a bunch of that, and so Spider-Man was sort of like kind of in that limbo. And they had sort of like a Japanese Spider-Man.
Okay, I haven't heard of that.
There was a couple other. There was like there was like a live action TV show with Spider-Man.
Okay.
That was like came out in the '80s or the late '70s. Because like at the time there was like the Incredible Hulk.
Oh, and like that. Yeah, I remember there was a lot of like the
live action. There was a '70s like Spider-Man.
There's the
Wonder Woman TV series with Linda Carter. But what really got me was I kind of watched that one with the X-Men, and then I've actually found it there. And then, but really the '90s Spider-Man show really kind of understood.
I know, that one was so good. Whatever. I remember like almost when I was little, it was almost, because some of those episodes were somewhat dark and.
Well, I think they were more interesting.
I know, it was almost like too. I think I remember my mom like shutting off the TV because some of the episodes. I don't know if there was like too.
Well, like I remember there was kind of a Frankenstein monsters episode with the lizard, Kurt Connors, and he had in this adoration, he had a wife and a daughter, and like Kurt Connors was like trying to. It was kind of the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of thing. And in I think Morbius,
Yeah, he
the
was there.
living vampire was in there.
Yeah, I think
too.
Blade shows up for an episode or two.
Yeah. Oh well, I haven't seen that one.
I think when they're hunting Morbius, I think Blade shows up.
And they've got like one where like and then like Green Goblin was a big one, and Harry Osborn, and you can tell. I couldn't tell that they were father and son, but like you could see little red like
the waves.
Is like, oh, that's Harry, that's Norman.
Right.
And then like the Black Cat and Spider-Man had a relationship in that show. And like Dr. Octopus was in there with.
Yeah, I don't know. I love the 90s animation.
No, I have played on. We played on the Nintendo, Spider-Man versus the Sinister Six, or.
Was that like the old like side scroller one?
No, it was the. It wasn't the battle. It wasn't the fight one. It was like you're Spider-Man and you shoot little things like webs and like. I mean, the graphics were terrible at the time, but I mean, not terrible, but they were in infancy.
Right.
But I just remember Spider-Man having like those pew pew pew, like you had to fight Electro was like your first villain, and it was so hard to fight him because he was. And Electro had like those French fries, kind of like lightning bolts that were like coming out of his mask and stuff. I guess, and then like I kind of did some research on kind of how originally they were trying to do a Spider-Man movie in the 90s. And there was rumors going around that James Cameron wanted to direct a Spider-Man film. Okay. And they were going to have Leonardo DiCaprio, and Leonardo DiCaprio at this time was still off the hinges of Romeo plus Juliet and Titanic. So this would have came out probably in 98.
Okay.
99. Yeah, and then like I just got into that's how I sort of got into Spider-Man, was a TV show. And then like there was Spider-Man Unlimited where you had like a cape, like a webbed cape for some reason.
Okay, I don't remember. I must have not watched that one.
Well, and then I started reading the comics, getting into the comics right around the Marvel Civil War, where it showed him actually revealing, actually it was before that, he gets an Iron Man suit because Iron Man wants him to join his thing, and Iron Man says it's a good idea to reveal himself, so he reveals himself to the public that he's Spider-Man, and then I got through that, and then like Ant-Man gets shot by the Punisher, which was a hit taken by the Kingpin, and that's how he got Back in Black. The series was called Back in Black, where he got the black suit again.
Gotcha.
And then there's like Anti-Venom and Venom and like it's just a lot. But let's kind of focus, since we're a movie and TV show podcast. Let's kind of hit on the films.
Right.
Let's start with the first Spider-Man that is actually celebrating its 20th anniversary this year. And actually the 10th anniversary of The Amazing Spider-Man, which came out in 2012. So I felt like it was a good time, and now that Spider-Man No Way Home came out, and we just kind of let's dive in, let's suit up and let's swing to Spider-Man. So, what was your first? So, when I first saw the Spider-Man trailer, it was a bunch of these thieves that rob a bank.
Right.
And then they go up to like a helicopter, and they fly their helicopter, and they get pulled back and caught in the web in front of the Twin Towers.
Right.
And then 9/11 happened, and they cut that out.
Right.
But I think if you watch the movie, the Sam Raimi, Tobey Maguire movie.
Right.
Sam Raimi, like, that was supposed to be the opening scene of the revealing scene of Spider-Man, but they cut that out because of the whole 9/11 stuff. So it'd been kind of, but it was kind of, that would have been kind of cool. But So Spider-Man, this version starred Tobey Maguire, who is I I feel like was a pretty good Spider-Man.
Should we just get our who's your favorite out of the way now?
Well, yeah, let's kind of go. Well, who's your favorite?
I mean, I guess for me, just like when it came out, and just it has to be Tobey Maguire's my Spider-Man.
I think Andrew Garfield, but after watching No Way Home and watching all kind of the Spider-Man movies back to back, I feel like they all bring something to
Yeah, they're all good.
It's not like the sense like when you look at Batman, for instance, you've got Batman, and we talked about how there were so many Batman in our DC Comics podcast, where I feel like Batman is so and I think now that we've had 20 years since it's 2022, 20 years of Spider-Man,
right,
and actually 70 years of Spider-Man since I think the first Spider-Man comic book came out in 62.
Okay, yeah, I'm not sure.
I think, but so that was what 50 years or.
Oh gosh, I can't do math in my head, Steve. Yeah, 60 years.
60 years.
Yeah.
So 60 years of Spider-Man. So what I liked about I felt like it was so cool to see Spider-Man on the big screen.
Right.
Like that was sort of the coolest part, And I felt like, you look at, I feel like looking back on it, I felt like Tobey Maguire was kind of played a good Peter Parker, but wasn't as good as when you watch him, Andrew, and he didn't have the same the puns. He didn't have that attitude.
Yeah, he wasn't very punny. It was more somewhat emotional and serious.
Yeah, which works, but right. I felt like when you did the first one, it kind of has a thing, like a opening. He needed to have a little bit of gravitas that you're kind of like, I like him now. But but what I liked about so the plot is pretty much this: Spider-Man does this so Peter Parker does his first opening of "Who am I? Do you really want to know?" He just kind of tells his story about how he's the faint of heart. My story isn't for the faint of heart. And he talks about how he basically is a creepy stalker for Mary Jane. So I kind of looked at, but he kind of, he brought something because the first opening of the movie is basically they're going to a field trip. They're on a field trip to
was it Oscorp?
Oscorp Industries, right. and Peter Parker.
He's a photographer.
No, he's not a photographer yet. He's still in high school.
Well, yeah, but he's like
he's the
student
newspaper,
right.
Yeah. And so he's a newspaper photographer, and he talks about, and so you kind of get an intro to him, and he talks about how he's pretty much in love with Mary Jane,
right?
And their neighbors, and how they are friend. How he's had a crush on her since ever, and he has sort of a so he gets to he's running through the bus. The bus finally stops because I think Mary Jane says he's been chasing us since 6th Avenue or something, and he's like, oh. So he gets on the bus, and nobody wants him to sit with him, even the girl with the glasses and the fat kid that's eating the donut.
Can't sit here.
You can't sit here. Seat's taken.
Yeah,
it's kind of like in Forrest Gump. And so he goes. So they go to the science. They go to Oscorp.
Right.
And Oscorp is working on. He's working on spiders.
Right.
genetically enhanced super spiders, and then one of them. So he's taking a picture for him for the school paper because we really want to know what the you know. I don't think a school paper would, but it's exposition and it makes,
right.
you know,
Gets bit by the spider.
he gets bit by the spider, and he has some like spider DNA mixed metal with him. And then, you know, what do you think of James Franco as Harry Osborn?
I thought I liked him. I guess I guess his dad is sort of like, you know, a powerhouse in the movie. I don't know.
Well, he's the powerhouse. I think he's
William Dafoe.
Dafoe just so brings it.
I know he brings it.
And well, he brought it in Spider-Man 1 too.
Right.
And I think that Spider-Man 1, he was sort of like, you know, he kind of can play that Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde thing, but he's so like but you got to look at it this way. At the beginning of the film, you know, he's kind of like, he's like, Harry, don't be afraid, don't be ashamed of who you are. But because, you know, he's very opening to Spider-Man. And so, or not Spider-Man, to Peter Parker.
Right.
And so Peter Parker, and I think he's sort of like, and there's a line where he says, your dad is really interested in my stuff, and he's like, he acts like he wants to adopt you. And so they go to the thing, and they go through Oscorp. They find that one of the spiders there's like 15 genetically enhanced super spiders, and one's missing, and there's one in the web. And so he's alone with MJ, and you can tell that he's meek and very timid, and you can kind of tell that he's probably the one that grows the most nerdy to when you look at how Andrew Garfield, because like I remember Andrew Garfield, like he's like nerd versus I was listening to a podcast where they were saying there's a difference between nerd and social outcast.
Right.
Nerd is, you know, kind of nerd and, you know, kind of like, you know, and he's super cool and he rides on a skateboard. And
right.
He looks really handsome and all that kind of stuff. So, and so he gets bitten by a spider and then goes home and the spider DNA matches with his DNA and ta-da! He's Spider-Man.
So he doesn't need his glasses.
He doesn't need his glasses and he's super ripped.
Yeah.
So Jay, what was then you gotta get into or Norman Osborn, too, and it's Norman Osborn is a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Talk about it. So he goes back home and is chilly and got a fever. And there's that funny line where she's like going, "Do you want a bite to eat?" And he's like, "No, I've already had a bite." You know?
Oh, right.
And so he basically goes to bed. The DNA of the spider and his matches, and he wakes up. He's super buff and doesn't need glasses.
Right. I forget. At that point, like I don't know.
So he gets his spider powers.
And like the highlights are he has like, you know, he has a fun fight with the school
Flash
bully.
Thompson,
where he's like dodging all the punches.
And Flash, and you know, Flash is actually dating in this version is dating Mary Jane.
Yeah, for now.
For now.
I guess the other big highlight for me, I remember this movie is when he's you know trying to figure out how to do his web sling, and
he says up and away.
Yeah, he's showing all this like go gadget web.
Go gadget web, and he just finally finds out if he just takes his two fingers,
he finds
the web. And this is the only one that has his organic webs,
right?
Where basically it goes through his bloodstream.
Yeah, right? He has spider glands.
He's got spider glands or something. Yeah, and so I mean. It pretty much starts with his whole, like, let's just kind of talk about how his, so it starts with his, you know, wanting to get a car.
Right.
He finds out that the easiest way to get, like, $3,000 is to go
wrestling.
Go into wrestling.
Right.
and he finds out that it's a cage match, but it's with
the Bonesaw,
who's played by Randy Macho Man Snap into a Slim Jim Savage. And he passed away, I think, like 10 or 11 years ago or something. Because I just remember, anyway, he did his whole video where it's like, we're gonna be in the Spider-Man movie, it's gonna be awesome or something.
Right.
And so he fights, so basically they give you the whole Uncle Ben spiel.
Right. Oh, right.
I mean, that he tells them that he's going to the library. He goes to the underground
fight,
wrestling match.
Doesn't stop the robber.
The robber shows up, doesn't stop him. He gets carjacked. He shoots Uncle Ben. Apparently, we'll find out in 3 what really happened. And then he decides to chase down the killer, and he finds out that he could have stopped him, and he trips the robber trips, and Spider-Man's kind of blamed for it, but he feels guilty about it, and so the next day is his graduation. The film kind of takes it to the graduation, and at the graduation, Norman pretty much says, "Pete, you're like a son. I'm sorry about." And that's the other thing too. Is Norman really feels? I think because they connect with science, that they like each other. And James Franco what do you think of James Franco as Harry Osborn?
I thought he was good. It's like, I think he plays a much bigger role in the next one.
The next and 2
and 3.
Yeah,
but I thought him it's sort of hard to compete against Willem Dafoe, but I thought he also did a pretty good job of like playing, the conflicted, Peter's taking my father's affection.
Yeah, and I like how it worked, and it feels like you also have to look at it this way. Spider-Man, kind of the same thing with back in 2000. X-Men was a big risk. This was a big risk as well. So you could tell that it was a little, it doesn't take itself so seriously like Amazing Spider-Man.
Right. I feel like they sort of do the somewhat same stuff in what's the first one of the third generation with the Vulture.
Oh, it's Spider-Man No Way Home. No, Homecoming.
Yeah, Homecoming. Where the dad and Peter are friends, but then they're enemies out. Sort of like the same thing with Norman.
Yeah.
Norman and Peter are friends.
Well, and what I like about Norman, but see, the thing is Norman doesn't, but Peter doesn't know until the climax of where Aunt May ends up having that prayer, and then she says, and deliver us from. And Norman or the Goblin comes out on this thing, and it was sort of like thing. But let's kind of talk about, since we're really going to kind of focus more on sort of all the Spider-Man movies. What was your thoughts after watching this film? I mean, I just kind of want your opinion. Kind of, I know you're like a couple years.
I guess this one's.
I was 14 when it came out.
Yeah,
so.
I guess for me, the sort of like the power of the nostalgia is pretty hard in this one. So I think very fondly of this movie. There's lots of bone saws.
Bone saws coming.
Right, and there's I remember just the thrill of seeing the web slinging.
Well, yeah, and just to see him on big screen.
Right.
And that was sort of, I kind of feel like with a lot of comic book movies, we've gotten so many of them that we've kind of taken the awe off of it.
I remember sort of the thing with the awe of like just him
it's kind of like when you watched Avengers and had them all together, everybody there is that same thing, but I think when you first saw it, I think now looking at it retrospectively, it's just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they would. Oh my gosh, I can't believe how. Oh my God, we saw Spider-Man on the big screen. And what I liked about, and then what I liked about the Green Goblin, William Dafoe, he can play it really well, where he can be very kind, but he's also very, you could tell that he can play the dual personality very well, but not over it, not overly doing it like, Gollum or something,
Right.
where,
I feel like that's what really you could have, like, you sort of have to have both. You have to have like the great villain, and you have to have the and I feel
good
like
hero.
this one has both.
And I liked how, I liked how, especially in the Thanksgiving scene, when he's like, he fights so the scene is he fights Spider-Man, which is, remember when he fights him in the burning building, and he's like going, and it's got that cheesiness to it,
right?
But it's okay. It was still, we didn't, where he says like, I'm out. Goblin says, I'm out, am I? And Peter says, you're out. Yeah, you're out. You're out of your mind, Gobby. And or something.
Right.
And he throws it, and of course they had the Matrix-ism with the dodging of the spinning bomb blade thing. Yeah. So what I liked about it, but it really works. It kind of tells you what's going on, and it hits you right where, it's not as, they really did a better job with Spider-Man 2, because I felt like they kind of knew more of what they were, this was, they had the origin story,
right? And
this film sort of did, was really more origin. Here's the villain. Here's the villain's plan. And what I liked about it is there, but William Dafoe or Norman Osborn, he really, probably the only thing now looking at it is they could have made it more interesting, has his conflictions.
Right.
Because he's on the ground looking at the, he's really sort of the goblin skull. Or
he's always looking at the mask. Yeah.
And the mask is sort of his, like, giving him, his evilness.
Right.
But that was, or giving him, sort of is his yin to his yang,
right,
kind of thing. But, but then, they have the, and I like that idea of the, with the, so kind of, you want to get to the climax of Spider-Man 1?
Oh, Spider-Man, like with the fight with the glider and stuff?
The fight with the glider, yeah.
Yeah.
So he basically kind of gives, he kind of sort of gives him a taste of his own, of not his own medicine, but of his fear.
Right.
And sort of going to Aunt May's house, and she says, deliver us from evil. And
right.
He comes down, and then he goes to the hospital, and then he says, I'm going to, affect everyone you love. He goes to Mary Jane. He kidnaps Mary Jane in the car. And I like Kirsten Dunst in this one. Okay. I mean, I think it's just because she kind of has nothing to... She does what she has. She has what she works with what she has. Yeah. They didn't really write...
Yeah, the way she was written... I think they sort of get better on writing MJ throughout the movies.
Yeah, well, MJ's... Especially when we go to 3, MJ's like... Spider-Man's getting all... well, she has so much... Well, she has to struggle with stuff. Because remember, MJ, when she's lives next door. She's the girl next door. And she's... he comes home, and he hears MJ and her dad, and her dad's kind of like getting all like, you're trash, you're never gonna make it.
Oh yeah, she has like an
abusive dad, and which he kind of changes a little bit. He changes a lot in 2. You find little subtext on it. But what I like, and I think that's the thing, is because if you look at the Spider-Man trilogy, it's really a story of MJ, Toby, or MJ, Peter, and Harry.
Right.
Their relationships. Because, so, at the end of 1, Norman, who I think is also struggling with trying to be, I think the Goblin is sort of his Gollum. And
yeah, he's like...
and I think he kind of says, because remember at the final battle, he says, Norman, it's Peter, it's not me, it's the Goblin. The Goblin's doing this to me, and he says, Peter, you're like a son to me, and Peter Parker says, I had a father, his name was Ben Parker. And that's the biggest thing that I feel like they didn't do well enough in this one, is they don't really they kind of like kill, I think in both Amazing Spider-Man Amazing Spider-Man, they give him a little bit more time, but with Spider-Man 1, it's almost like Peter Parker or Uncle Ben is just sort of like, Peter, I just want to let you know, with great power comes great responsibility. Now have a good day at work, and then good day at school, or at the thing. And he says, or when he's going to do the thing, and he's like, stop lecturing. And you can tell that Peter still has those angst. He can play well, even though he's playing it at like 23 as a high school student. But let's not dwell on that. So I guess let's go through. I guess have we kind of caught up everything on Spider-Man 1? You want to go to?
Yeah, I think we've covered Spider-Man 1 pretty well.
So what would you give Spider-Man 1?
Oh man.
I feel like it was what it was. I think you have to look at it two ways. I think it sort of set up the standard for Spider-Man.
Right.
And I think it's kind of like the first Batman movie. It was kind of, and it's kind of the first Batman movie I felt like was a risk for the studio.
Right.
And I think this was a risk that pays off. I think it made like $1 billion.
No, yeah, it was a phenomena.
And I just remember the song, and they say that hero takes.
Right.
Because I had the CD.
Oh, the soundtrack.
The soundtrack. Oh gosh. So 2004 rolls around, so it's 2 years after Spider-Man 1, and we hit Spider-Man 2. It's still directed by Sam Raimi, and people say Spider-Man 2 was the best one.
I thought it was really good. I mean, it still had, it had great, it still had the same, a good Spider-Man. It had great villains, with Harry, and it sort of almost was
It had Alfred Molina as Dr. Octopus.
Yeah, but I can't remember, was William Dafoe in the two, sort of as, like the
William Dafoe
in the
shows
mind
up.
Of Harry?
William Dafoe shows up at the end of Spider-Man 2, where because remember in Spider-Man 2, let's kind of just before we go, so Spider-Man 2, Peter's in college now.
Right.
He's struggling. He's kind of like, he's the lovable, poor bastard, as they call it, where everything is not going for him well, but you feel like, oh gosh, if he just keeps trying.
I think it was like struggling like the school
and
violence.
Spider-Man.
Right, yeah.
So he's kind of like trying to balance three.
And then his relationship with MJ too. I think wasn't that
his relationship with MJ? Yeah, it's more in the third one.
Okay,
in the second one, it's more of like MJ sort of still wants. I think she's still not ready for a relationship with him.
Okay. Because
remember at the end of Spider-Man 1, he says, remember at the graveyard of Norman, she says, when I was sitting up on the rooftop, thinking I'm about to die, all I was thinking about was my best friend, Peter. And she really kind of like confesses his love to her. Or she confesses his love to him, her love to him, and he kind of says, he kind of basically tears her proposal down. So, and Peter's really, he's trying to be better. Like he goes to, he's a piece, he works at the Daily Bugle, and he wants to get pitched in. J.J. Jameson, who we have to say, let's just say before we go on that J.K. Simmons was born to play J. Jonah Jameson.
Yeah.
I mean, he's
just, I don't know, he's just so good. It's like almost, I don't know, it's like the comic or the animated person like just come to life. It's like
like
you can't get any more.
You
perfect.
can't get any, and I think it's the same thing. When we look at, the Peter Parkers throughout the series, they all bring something, but they all bring their own uniqueness to it.
Right.
But you can't replace. It's kind of like you just can't. It's kind of like Heath Ledger's Joker.
Right.
I mean, I wouldn't say it was that great, but he's just so perfect as, especially like lines where it's like, move Conway to Conway Patch 2. Your wife's on the line. It says, and so, but let's go with him. And so in the first one, he's pretty much like, they're crap. He's looking at the pictures because like he needs pictures of Spider-Man to sell his newspaper. So Peter Parker shows up and gets a bunch of pictures and finds like crimes in the area and does a lot of like, spider scenes and tries to get good pictures.
Because he's obsessed trying to get Spider-Man like as a menace, right?
Yeah, and he's like, they're crap, and he gives them to him, and he's like, they're crap. I'll give you 500 for all of them. And he says, 500? Isn't that a little bit not enough? And he's like, well, your wife's on the line. And, he's the comic relief, and of course Elizabeth Banks plays a really great Betty Bryant. But and I think the guy that played Robbie, what's his name? Oh, the Robbie, his partner, J.J. Jameson's partner.
I can't remember him.
Yeah. Well, so let's go back to Spider-Man 2.
Right.
So Spider-Man 2. So Peter's really at this point he's trying to get his life together. Right. I think he's having struggles to balance Spider-Man life and Peter Parker's life together.
Right. And
so he works as a pizza delivery guy.
Oh right. Oh,
and the guy says, didn't I have a? He says I have a 500 30-minute delivery service because he's a pizza delivery guy, and so he's like going through traffic, and of course, just for Spider-Man's sake, there's like a
bank robbery getaway or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, and he like, or no, he's just like going through. I think it was like he's going through traffic.
I can't remember. I just remember it's like a little like moped thing.
Yeah, he's on his moped, and then he's like, I gotta make it. And then he goes in and he turns on the Spider-Man and he puts the pizzas on that guy's balcony.
Uh-huh.
And then he like grabs it and he saves these kids from a car and he says, "No playing in the street." And they go, "Thank you, Spider-Man." And so he goes to this he goes to this like board meeting or like this office building, and he says that like, I'm not paying, and she's like, the secretary rep's not paying for the pizzas.
Oh, because it's late.
And then he gets fired.
Right.
But he's like, he's that's the thing with, I think, Spider-Man 2. What makes it so good is he's trying to balance being Spider-Man,
right,
and being Peter Parker, and that's a hard job to do. Let's talk about Dr. Otto Octavius, the villain of Spider-Man 2.
Right.
What was your first thoughts on Alfred Molina's performance?
I thought it was really. I mean, I liked it. I don't know. It's sort of hard to beat. I feel like William Dafoe.
Right.
Yeah. So coming off that, I think it's maybe, I don't know, not as good as William Dafoe, but I thought he was very good.
I thought he was, and you kind of can tell that he was. It is the. I think with both characters.
Right.
And even when you get into Spider-Man 3, they all have some sort of humanity to them.
Right. I think that's what makes them
interesting.
Yeah, interesting.
Well, I mean, it's,
and
I think
it's like a conflict.
And so he's doing a paper. So Peter's doing a paper on Otto Octavius, and James Franco, Harry Osborn, is doing a Harry Osborn's basically split bill and says you can meet him because remember this is also he kind of had this is his birthday and this is his birthday party as well that and that's how so the next day he meets Otto Octavius who's like he's got that joke where he says has anybody lost the roll of $100 bills because we found a rubber band full of $100 bills because we found the rubber band. He's like, it's a terrible joke. And Alfred Molina plays him. He they do play sort of the Frankenstein,
right?
Or not Frankenstein, but the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. I think all three of them.
Yeah.
But So, what was your thoughts on Spider-Man 2?
I liked it. I don't know if I personally would rank it above the first Spider-Man, but I thought it was very strong.
Yeah, I did too. I think MJ is, you look at Spider-Man 3, and Spider-Man is really getting sort of, and when we get into 3, he's getting a lot more love, and MJ is getting a lot more love in the second one.
Right.
But what I like is it does take a lot from the Spider-Man No More comic.
Right.
In Spider-Man No More, he gives up being the pressure of Spider-Man, and so you kind of see him sort of go into Spider-Man.
Gotcha.
So I like what they did. I think Alfred Molina's Otto Octavius is really good. I like where Spider-Man is in his life, his character's getting better at it, and what I like about 2 was just it was such a strong and Dr. Otto Octavius is like the bank robbery scene was pretty cool.
Right.
What was your thoughts on them? Just like Otto Octavius, or at all?
I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to remember. I'm not as familiar. Like my memory's not as great for the second one. I don't know. I
remember he robs the bank.
Right, because he needs funding for
his fusion thing, and the fusion thing was to have the power of the sun. And the thing about what happened is he had a processor chip because the arms that he had were controlled by him. But if it's the processor chip is turned off or broken, the hands will have a mind of his own, which is what happened.
Right.
And so. And I like Dr. Otto Octavius because he also has this thing where he talks to Kurt Connors and says, Kurt Connors told me you're brilliant. He also says you're lazy. And he says, brilliance is a gift. You don't need to be wasting that gift being lazy or something like that.
Right.
And we're going to try to get you to No Way Home, but we're just kind of giving you sort of a breakthrough of Spider-Man 2, 3.
Right.
Let's look at Mary Jane.
Uh-huh.
Mary Jane, she does feel like the damsel in distress a lot in the first 2.
Right.
And which I think works for Spider-Man, for a superhero movie, but she's not dumb.
No. I don't know if she's. Oh, I guess in every iteration of the movies, I don't think she's ever just a dumb. It just sort of. I feel like they get better writing her throughout
the trilogy.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and throughout the trilogy, and I guess also with the different iterations of the movies,
yeah.
I feel like she gets better.
Well, and I mean, I know one thing we've got to talk about in Spider-Man 1. What was your thoughts on the kiss?
Oh, the upside down kiss?
Yes.
Was that the second one? Or
that was the first one.
Okay, yeah.
Because in the first one, and let's just kind of go back and forth.
All right.
The first one, um, was sort of the like. So she basically is on her way, uh, on her way to home, and these like thugs who are just sort of like sitting next to their car, like says, "Hey, sweetie," and so they follow her, and then Spider-Man like sees that and says, "I guess it's time for me to go and spider up." So he gets the suit on, and he fights them all without his mask.
Right.
Then he goes, "Who are you?" And then she's like, and he goes up, and he comes down, and she says, "You have a knack for saving my life." And he says, you know, yeah, I was in the neighborhood, and then he rolls it up, and the kiss. I mean,
Right.
that kiss was so. It's it's been 20 years, and I still think that kiss is so iconic. How they even did that on a episode of the OC.
I didn't know that.
But so let's finish. I guess let's kind of catch up to Spider-Man 2. Where were we, Spider-Man 2?
I think we're just going over what we thought of the villains. I think we're somewhat.
So he does the fusion. He wants
right.
to, he wants to sort of, and I like, but I like how he, if you look at both him, he changes, and kind of, he wants that power of the sun,
right?
And I think that's his goal. But I feel like he's doing it for, they all have good intentions,
right.
But it just they go adrift,
right?
Somehow.
Yeah.
But,
and then I don't know if we want to just move on to Spider-Man 3.
Spider-Man 3. Well, here's the thing about Spider-Man 3. I've been wanting to get to it.
Yeah.
Spider-Man 3 could have been written so much better. Here's the thing. They could have made Venom. I think Sam Raimi did not want to do Venom at all for Spider-Man 3.
Right.
So he was like, well, hell, if the studio wants me to do it, I'm going to half-ass this. But I feel like with Spider-Man 3, what they could have done is which was interesting because the comic at the time in Amazing Spider-Man, Civil War was over. The Marvel Civil War was over. And Aunt May gets shot.
Okay.
Which was a hit on, and this is all in the comics.
Right, right.
Which was hit on by Kingpin. He gets the black suit. And now the black suit was the symbiote suit.
Right.
And he could like swing with his wrist. It wasn't coming out here, but it was coming out of his front.
It's like the suit was
shooting webs. And he finds that Kingpin put the hit on Aunt May. And he goes and takes off his suit and fights him knuckle to knuckle.
Uh-huh.
And he he gets beaten. But it's this whole back in black thing.
Okay.
But in the movie, I felt like what I looked at with the movie is I like it because it starts out with him being open or like being embraced by New York City.
Right.
Because at the beginning of that, and he's being embraced by New York City, and everyone's like, they love me, and that's what Peter's thinking, and MJ is sort of in the same rut that Peter's in the second one, because her play's not going well, she's getting bad reviews.
Right.
It's sort of like, but she now knows that Peter Parker's Spider-Man. So there's this sort of like, all the world knows not all the world, but the, everybody, you're Spider-Man and everything's going good for you, but what about me? And you kind of, and I feel two ways about this. Is I feel like I'm kind of like going, yeah, but Spider-Man is actually finally being Spider. Like, what's your problem, lady? What was your thoughts on Spider-Man 3? Because I want to get the Venom later.
Yeah, I guess just a broad strokes was just they needed to lose one of the villains. I feel like they're just with the three.
Here's my thing.
Uh-huh.
I feel like they needed to. I could see that.
Right.
I feel like what you could have done is done Green. I think the Green Goblin, the new Green Goblin,
Yeah, right.
played by James Franco, and Sandman would have been good.
I feel,
And I feel like, because I feel like the black suit Spider-Man, Sam Raimi did not want to do a Venom.
Yeah,
and I think the studio was saying like, well, we would like you to do Venom, and he's like, well, you're paying me X amount of money. I'll do Venom, but I'm not gonna do Venom. I mean, but look what we got now. We've got Tom Hardy as Venom, and he's done a better job.
Right. Yeah, and the Peter Parker as sort of like the evil version.
The evil of him. I feel like, see, in the comics, when that happened, he's a lot more, because in the comics, he's in a movie, or no, he's a teacher. He's a teacher at Midtown High School. He's a science teacher. Flash Thompson is a gym teacher.
Okay.
Flash Thompson in the comics, and if you know in Spider-Man, in Amazing Spider-Man and in Spider-Man No Way Home, or in the Tom Holand Spider-Man series,
right.
Flash loves Spider-Man but hates Peter Parker. So in that movie, he kind of can't believe the guy he's been picked on is the guy he idolizes. So it's a very interesting kind of thing. But I do understand. I feel like they kind of they could have. What I would like them to have done is done what they did with Superman in Smallville season 2 with Red. There's an episode called Red where and I probably talked about this on the DC one, but he gets a red kryptonite, and it's kind of like, I have all this power, but I have no morals or something. And what I liked about with the black suit, or what I would fix, with great power comes no responsibility.
Right.
But they could have done it better.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. It just didn't work quite right.
Well, and I think the Sandman thing, and them kind of saying like, the Sandman, he was, and let's talk about Sandman. Was like, I liked how they kind of wrote him in as like, he had another accomplice. Oh, where was this guy? I mean, at least they did it. They wrote him in well enough. Right. And Thomas Hayden Church played a great Sandman.
Right.
And he comes back in this Spider-Man No Way Home. So I kind of have more respect for him now. But Eddie, let's talk about Topher Grace as Eddie Brock. Last week.
Yes.
I mean, he was kind of like, I think he was trying to be the anti-Peter. Right. Where he was trying to be smooth, because remember he comes in and he's going like, banana, he kind of talks to Betty Bryant in sort of weird way, and at the Spider-Man parade in New York City, when Stacy is hanging by the thing, by like the rock, which is kind of basically the same thing that happens to Mary Jane in Spider-Man 1, but he's like taking pictures and he's like, oh yes, by the way, I'm dating your daughter. So it was kind of like he was kind of written in there, but he just doesn't have any like push. It was just kind of like, Peter Parker humiliated me, I want to get revenge. And I felt like but I felt like the black suit could have been done more with his, like, not made him emo, but made him, more.
Yeah, I think a lot of times doesn't it like make him like, because normally Spider-Man doesn't try to hurt, like it normally makes him like more violent.
More violent.
Like, as he's like taking out criminals and stuff. And,
yeah, which I feel like he was more emo, but I think once he like because he kind of wants to show off Gwen Stacy to Mary Jane. Because remember, in that really ridiculous Spider-Man stance.
Oh, yeah, at the club thing.
At the club thing, I was kind of like going, But I can kind of see where they're going with that. Is that they're kind of showing him he's kind of got. I think he's basically trying to get Spider-Man, or not Spider-Man. He's trying to get sort of sort of that black suit's kind of the symbiote's kind of really giving him sort of that endorphins to just be kind of
messing with his head.
Messing with his head. And then once he kind of he kind of gets aggressive. So basically he goes out to the club where Mary Jane's working with Gwen Stacy. He dances with Gwen Stacy, and then he kind of shows her off. Kind of like he's dancing with her, and then and then she realizes that, oh, am I just sort of this plaything for Peter just to be, idolized, just to get back at MJ? Right. And once she finds out that, and he gets sort of aggressive, and with MJ, and he basically pushes her down on the floor, he gets kicked out, and kind of he realizes that the black suit is making him think. They could have made it so much. They could have really worked that a lot better.
Right.
I don't know if, I think there's a guy that does this thing called fanscription, and one of the things he talked about was, what if Venom wasn't in Spider-Man 3 and how that would affect it? Because I think you're right. I think Spider-Man 3 needed at least one villain to focus on, or at least let it breathe enough that each villain got.
There's just too many conflicts going on, and just can't give enough time. The conflict between Peter's relationship with MJ, and then his conflicts with all the other villains is too many. And
Sandman was just oh, apparently I'm the one that killed your uncle, or it was kind of not like.
Right.
It was it wasn't the guy that, this is the guy we thought killed your uncle. It was this guy,
Yeah,
Then it was kind of I was doing it for my daughter, blah 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 blah, but I think Thomas Hayden Church played him really well.
No, I agree.
But and then they were gonna do in 2011 Spider-Man 4.
Okay, I didn't know that.
They were originally gonna do Spider-Man 4, and I think they were gonna do Ben Kingsley as the Vulture.
Okay.
And they were gonna have Bruce Campbell as Mysterio, which would make kind of sense that there might be a cinematic universe in that before the cinematic universe started. But Sony now with rights to a film, you have to use those rights in a number of years, or they go for sale or something. So Sony has to use. So we got Amazing Spider-Man. What was your thoughts on Amazing Spider-Man? Because I think he was a better Peter and a better Spider-Man than Andrew.
I don't know about better. He was very fun
at the time. What were your thoughts? Or did you?
I thought he was a very fun Peter. He was
he had those quips.
Yeah, he was very quips. I don't know. I feel like the villains weren't up to snuff. Ignoring 3, I don't know. Compared to William Dafoe and Dr. Ock, it's sort of
Yeah, I felt two things. I feel like Rafe Fiennes. What is his name? The guy that played the
lizard.
The lizard.
I know it's Connors.
Dr. Connor. The guy that played Dr. Connors. He played him decently. I liked how he was sort of he had no arm, which I think in the comics he didn't have an arm either.
Yeah.
But he kind of has. He wasn't that. He was really interesting as a villain, and I liked how he basically was. You could tell that because in this storyline, let's go with the storyline.
Right.
So Peter Parker is left on his doorstep, just like Harry Potter, but he's a little bit older, by his parents, who are, in the comics, they were agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Right.
And so they go on a plane secret mission. And this was directed by Mark Webb.
Okay.
And Mark Webb directed 500 Days of Summer, which is a good movie. And I think also um, this was part of the Ultimate Spider-Man. Kind of has a little bit of that Ultimate Spider-Man feel.
Okay.
But let me go back. So they leave him at his doorstep with his aunt. Then they go traveling and they never come back. But you'll find out in Amazing Spider-Man 2 what happened to him. Peter kind of grows up to be, handsome, good-looking, but nerdy. But he's super cool because he drives on a skateboard.
Right.
Andrew Garfield, Spider-Man. And I like how... What was your thoughts on Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man?
I thought he was... I mean, he's definitely not bad. I thought he was good as Spider-Man. Yeah. It's just sort of hard... I guess for me, he doesn't... Still Tobey's...
Yeah, I can see where Tobey... And I feel like Andrew brought that quippiness that Tobey couldn't bring, because questions like, where he's like, he had lines like, here's your change, but Spider, he was a little bit more street smart, or not street smart, but he had street slang to him.
Yeah, I feel like when Tobey gave those, it was like almost too goofy.
Yeah.
But I think yeah.
But what I like about how, so he basically is left, and apparently this sort of storyline is they were agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. in the comics, and their plane goes down, and he's got to live with his Aunt May and Uncle Ben, played by Sally Fields. And so he goes to school, and he's hanging out with Gwen Stacy. So they didn't really do Mary Jane in this one. And Gwen, you gotta love Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy, because she brought something. She wasn't sort of like where I felt like with Mary Jane or Kristen Dunst's Mary Jane. She was a little bit written. She was underdevelopedly written.
No, I agree.
Yeah. But you really tell that Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone had great chemistry.
Yeah.
And they actually did it. I think in real life they dated.
Okay.
In real life. So, so they go to so the film opens up where he goes to school, and Flash Thompson, who's played by Blonde Hair McGee, and Flash Thompson is basically like, Spider-Man. Not Spider. Flash Thompson is pretty much makes fun of Peter Parker and stuff like that. But he's not geeky. Peter Parker, this Andrew Garfield's not as geeky as.
Right.
Well, I mean, he's still like
into science stuff. Yeah. That's like not his like only personality.
Yeah. And what was your thoughts on just how'd you like Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man?
No, I really liked Andrew Garfield. I guess my thing for these movies, I just felt like the villains weren't as.
Yeah,
good.
I could tell. I mean, I think when we get to Spider-Man 2, I was kind of thinking, or Amazing Spider-Man 2, Electro really wasn't that great of a villain, but he kind of redeems himself when you look at Spider-Man No Way Home.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't. It's sort of like it's like I feel like I don't know the actor that plays Electro.
Jamie Foxx.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like his character's fun, and it's just I don't know, but something about it is just not it doesn't meld well for the spot. I don't know.
Okay, I could see that. I mean, I give him a chance. I mean, I feel like Electro was a little bit more. But before we go to Electro, let's kind of talk about Spider-Man. So like, what was kind of like? I like how Captain Stacy, who was sort of
that was good. I like that for the plot.
Where Captain Stacy, played by Dennis Leary, who was in Ice Age as the Sabretooth, but you know him from Rescue Me and stuff like that. Dennis Leary was pretty much a good. I liked him as Captain Stacy.
Yeah.
He kind of has that same. There wasn't really J.J. Jameson at all, which was kind of hard to kind of like go, oh gosh, a Spider-Man film without J.J. Abrams.
Right.
But you also gotta look at the tone of that movie. Amazing Spider-Man played a little bit darker,
Right.
and I think part of it was the Batman Begins.
Yeah, really stepped up, or
stepped up the comic book films, and I
Right.
felt like Amazing Spider-Man. But Amazing Spider-Man really was sort of the darker. I think if you give it a better, I think now looking at it with all of the Spider-Man together, it might be changed a little bit. I mean, you could tell the difference between how dark, like the lighting and the filming
Right.
was versus the way how light Amazing Spider-Man 2 was. But I kind of thought I liked kind of but I like how Peter or Andrew Garfield played Peter Parker, even in like the kitchen scene where he's with his where two things, when he's with Captain Stacy and Gwen, and it's that awkwardness of meeting your girlfriend's parents for the first time, and that kind of thing, and being lovey-dovey to each other, kind of thing like that. But what was your thoughts on Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy?
No, I thought she was great.
Yeah.
I thought that was, I guess she died in this one.
No, she died too.
Okay. Well, yeah, their whole, I don't know. I think that was the strong point of the Amazing Spider-Man, was that dynamic.
Yeah, and like and they've got good chemistry. Like there's that line where he like puts her and takes her, like he finds her and takes her, and like they get into the closet together, and they're like going. She's like, this is the most secret. I mean, it's Emma Stone. I mean, she's so good. I've seen her in Easy A, and I've seen her in like Superbad, and she really brings it too. And I like what they did with Spider-Man.
Yeah.
In this one, I think each of them brought something.
Yeah, I feel like this. Man, I don't know if it's. I mean, I don't know. I feel like that was the highlight. Was like because it wasn't her, like her dad. Like you got to stay away to protect. Like,
yeah.
Because like
at the end,
she's gonna get hurt if you.
Yeah. And it's kind of the same. And in the first one, he's like, I can't really let anybody know because my enemies know that I'm Spider-Man. They'll come after me and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Which is pretty much in the same vein, except for Spider-Man: Homecoming and that kind of thing. But I like what they did. I thought Lizard was really interesting.
Yeah, I don't know.
Come on, Jay.
I just can't remember. Like after he becomes a lizard, does he like any, or is he just like pure? I want to turn everyone else into lizards at that point?
Yeah, well, he turns into. He wants to grow his arm.
Yeah,
back.
He starts out pretty good.
And I think in the lizardness kind of, and then he becomes the lizard, and then he kind of fights Peter Parker.
Right.
And then Peter's looking for him in the sewer. And then he finds Peter Parker's camera. And he kind of puts two and two together.
Gotcha. And
then, like, he wants to make the whole world into lizards.
Right.
And that's kind of the climax.
Right.
But I like Gwen and Peter really do have a good thing. And then they did Amazing Spider-Man 2. In 2014, and Amazing Spider-Man 2, I felt like Spider-Man 1 made a decent amount of money, that they were like, and they made it lighter. They kind of, the suit was different. The suit felt more spidery, or not spidery, but more comic booky. And Electro, who I felt like Jamie Foxx did a good job. But I felt like he could have been. He kind of played the Edward Nygma character. If you look at how Edward Nygma was in Batman Forever, kind of Jim, it was kind of like that.
Yeah. I feel like, it just, I don't know. Electro just
didn't gel with you. But I think he kind of redeemed himself in Spider-Man Far From Home, or No Way Home.
Yeah, he still wasn't. I feel like in Far From Home, like the villains from the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man sort of stole the show.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to that in a second. But I liked what they did with his suit. I liked how I kind of felt like the whole Norman Osborn, like he's played by Chris Cooper, and Chris Cooper is a good actor, and all he does is sit in the bed and go, "I'm about to die, Harry."
See, I think I've only saw it in theaters, that one. I can't even remember.
I saw a review of it, so I'm in kind of.
Gotcha.
So like.
So I didn't even remember that he was.
So he was in there, and like Norman. So and like Norman Osborn's mentioned in Amazing Spider-Man 1.
Okay.
Because when they go to Oscorp, where he goes and sees.
Oh, right. It's because Connors worked at Oscorp.
Yeah, Connor works at Oscorp, and so he goes, "Oh look, I got bit by a spider. Oh no."
Right.
So I like what they did with this Amazing Spider-Man 2. I feel like you're right. I feel like Andrew Garfield was probably the best part of that. Because I was a little bit like, I felt like Max, the whole I'm a nobody likes me, but.
And you said this is the one where Gwen dies?
Yeah. And that was
a very powerful scene.
That was taken straight from the comics.
Okay, that was, I don't remember that. I didn't think the movie was good, but that scene was very, I guess it was a gut punch.
Yeah, well, in the comics, she kills him. In the comics, he kills him off like they take the same. So if you look at Spider-Man 1, they took the scenery of the death of Gwen Stacy because it was on a bridge in the comics with Gwen Stacy, and they took that and they made Mary Jane and the Green Goblin, and Amazing Spider-Man 2 or Spider-Man 4, as I like to call it. Or 5, excuse me.
Right.
They sort of did the same thing because she wears kind of a purple outfit and stuff, and I kind of like what they did with, that kind of thing.
Right.
And then so Sony basically they were gonna do Amazing Spider-Man 3. And 3 didn't happen, so Sony and Marvel made a deal, and they brought back Spider-Man 4. He actually had a cameo in Spider-Man, and
Homecoming?
No, he was in Avenger, he was in Captain America Civil War.
Yeah.
So Captain America Civil War, in this iteration, Peter Parker is pretty much not known as Spider-Man, but Spider-Man lives in New York and does all his web swinging.
Right.
And he's a teenager.
Right.
And he's played by Tom Holand because he's British. Because, Andrew Garfield and Tom Holland are both British.
I didn't know that. Okay.
And so he comes in Captain America and Captain America 3. And he basically works with Tony Stark. So, and which kind of plays it with Civil War, because in the comics, Civil War happens, Peter Parker's with Iron Man.
Right.
And then he kind of finds out that Iron Man's doing kind of up to, he doesn't agree with everything, and then
switches
sides. But, Civil War happens, and if you remember Civil War, it was about the Sokovia Treaty, and Iron Man says that we should, basically, come to the, government and that kind of thing. But he shows up in Spider-Man 3, but then he gets his own movie in Spider-Man Homecoming. So, Spider-Man Homecoming comes out in 2019, I think.
I can't remember the year.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they don't have to do the whole origin story, right?
No.
Right, which is sort of nice.
Yeah.
It's sort of refreshing not having to go through the whole origin story again.
Yeah, and I kind of like what they did with, and I like kind of, because like in Civil War, he's like, he's apparently Spider-Man's done, a bunch of like YouTube videos too. And Tony Stark kind of says, yeah, I've seen you on the internet and done all this kind of stuff. And I kind of look at Amazing Spider-Man or not Amazing Spider-Man, Spider-Man 2, which got, or Spider-Man Homecoming, or, he shows up in Captain America and becomes sort of, Mr. Tony Stark's sort of protege.
Right.
And I kind of thought that what I liked about Tony's that version is he's quippy, but he still feels like he's 15.
No, yeah, I definitely I feel like Tom Holland gets like the best sort of confused teenager part down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he has his first movie called Spider-Man Homecoming after Civil War in 2017. And so Spider-Man Homecoming sets up basically he's been Spider-Man.
Right.
You're right, there's no origin story.
And I feel like this one, I guess for me, I'm always with the villains. I feel like the Vulture was a pretty good.
Well, he's played by Michael Keaton, who was Batman.
I know. Michael Keaton's, I feel like he's a pretty powerful actor, and he sort of brings a lot to charisma.
Yeah.
Just I don't know. I like the Vulture's character.
Well, see, I like him, and I like
the scenes where he's dating his.
Well, it's Mary Jane, but it's MJ.
Right.
MJ is and I like MJ in this one as well, because MJ is kind of like, what are you staring? She changed, and you really see an evolution of her throughout the No Way Home, the Home series, the Home trilogy, as I like to call it. And I kind of feel like, and to be honest, after watching all 3 Spider-Man movies,
right,
Kristen Dunst is the only one that just doesn't have that much, charisma.
Yeah, I just don't know. It's hard. I don't know if it's like her fault. I feel like
it's not her
like
fault.
Writing.
It's not her fault.
It's
I think it's her writing.
Like they got better at making that character interesting as they made the movies.
Yeah. But I kind of like what.
And I like how they added. I can't remember his name. Like his best friend
Ned
is like a great comic relief. I feel like they've got.
And he's not. What I like about Ned is that Ned's not. You're right. He's a great comic relief. He doesn't annoy you.
No, it's not like the Jar Jar Binks type thing.
Yeah, it's not like it is.
I feel like it's like this is the point where they've reached where we don't have to be like the super gritty. Like we can still have emotional stuff going on, and
they do have it when we get to 3 or 8, or yeah.
I feel like even this one too has has some serious moments, but a lot of it's more it's a lot of fun.
I like Marissa Tomei as Aunt May.
Uh-huh.
I feel like she's kind of like that cool aunt.
Right.
I kind of looked at sort of like Aunt May in the first one, who played amazingly by Rosemary Harris. She played, and I liked how she has really good, things where she, in 2, Amazing Spider-Man, or Spider-Man 2, she says, "I believe there's a hero in all of us, makes us noble, makes us great," And you kind of feel like she does have that. She kind of has that great aunt feel to her,
right?
And I think I was actually watching Spider-Man with Spider Facts on it. She got so much once these movies came out, she had so much kids coming up to her going, "Oh, I loved you, aren't you Aunt May? Aren't you Peter Parker?" And because she's been acting since the 30s.
Okay. So Steve, what was your favorite parts of Homecoming?
Homecoming. What I liked about Homecoming is I liked how they didn't do anything with Spider-Man. They didn't do any intro.
Right.
They basically said he's Spider-Man. He does his stuff. I like what they did with the Vulture.
Right.
I like how it sort of connects to Tony Stark, and after the events of Civil War.
Yeah,
and
sort
the
of
blip.
the alien.
Was the blip?
No, they hadn't had the blip yet. I think they were mining. They were the big alien invasion.
Ready? So this one's pre-blip.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure this one's pre-blip. I think the next one, Far From Home, is post-blip.
This is post Civil War.
Right.
So basically, now we're this is sort of our intro to this Spider-Man.
Right.
In this film. And Tony Stark is giving him a new suit, or giving him a suit.
Right.
That basically he can turn on and, press his little stomach and it goes.
It's got the nanobots.
Yeah. And so, so basically, so it's kind of him and Tony Stark adventure, if you think about it.
Right. I think it's, it's sort of like Tony's trying to keep him away from he's like just do local friendly neighborhood spider stuff.
Yeah,
something like the big stuff.
Yeah, we'll handle the big stuff. And I think it's sort of do you think it's different? Like, do you think do you think we'll kind of talk about Tom Holand as he kind of grows in Far From Home, or his second one and third outing, but so in this one I kind of felt like it worked where I feel, and I like, let's kind of talk about, I like his kind of relation. MJ's kind of cooler than previous one iteration. Right. She's kind of like, you guys are weird. You guys are weird, Right. And and I like his friend Ned.
Yeah, no, that's a great duo.
And Ned is kind of cool. I mean, he's kind of a lovable, losery, cool kind of thing.
Right. I feel like this one's the best where even when Peter turns into Spider-Man, they're still, him and Ned are still both just nerds. Like, playing with Legos. They're
playing with Legos and stuff. And like, you're the Spider-Man? It's kind of that coolness of it. And, I mean, and then we got to talk about Batman himself. Michael Keaton.
Yeah, Michael Keaton.
So Michael Keaton comes into this movie as the Vulture.
Yeah.
And he's pissed at Tony Stark for losing his job. I think
I can't remember the exact reason.
Yeah, I think he loses his job because I think at the beginning of the film he sort of is finding Stark technology.
Or it's not even the alien technology.
Alien technology from Avengers.
Yeah, from the big battle at New York. There's sort of these big sort of destruction that they can harvest from these big whale things.
And so he's basically finding, and so he's kind of doing that, and he's found his suit that makes him become the Vulture.
Yeah.
And in the comics, Vulture pretty much has this green
it's
suit.
It's more like a mutant, right?
Well, he's not a mutant, but he has it's got feathers and stuff.
I just remember he's this weird, creepy old, he was part bird. I don't know. He's wasn't.
But this one, he's got more of a suit, and it's kind of got kind of a thing. And Michael Keaton played such a great. I'm so cool that Michael Keaton's in a Marvel movie.
Yeah, he'll always his dynamic is as being MJ's dad and trying to vet Peter.
Yeah,
and then also are you trying to figure out who Spider-Man
is. Well, I like
is.
how he's sort of he meets Spider-Man, and and he kind of it's kind of the same scene. And if you look at Amazing Spider-Man at the train, or not Amazing Spider-Man, Spider-Man 2 with the train.
Uh-huh.
And in that train thing, he he fights Dr. Octopus. He gets on he tries to stop the runaway train.
Right.
And then he faints, and then they say, "Oh, you look like your son. Oh, he looks no older than my son," because they find out he's just a kid.
Uh-huh.
And that sort of. So and then he says, we won't tell anybody. The kids will tell, it's sort of that kind of that. But I think with this one, it worked. But the mystery builds up,
right?
Because it's kind of we don't know. It was kind of a real shocker to reveal that Vulture is MJ's father.
Right. It's sort of a double twist. Right.
Yeah.
I think doesn't Peter find out first that Michael Keaton's the Vulture?
Yeah,
Right.
I think so.
Before he finds out that he's
kind of feel like we should have watched this before we did this podcast. We're more focused on No Way Home or
right. So what is your? I thought Homecoming was pretty strong.
I liked Homecoming. I was a little bit worried because like, oh, another Peter Parker, but he brings something to it.
Right.
I think I think there's not really a bad Peter Parker.
No, I think they've all been good. And then, and so I guess the next Spider-Man iteration after.
So, what happens? So at the end, Vulture goes to jail.
Yeah, I think they come to understand, like, I'm not going to give up your secret identity in jail. I forget, because I think, does he save his life at the end or something?
Yeah. And then he's like, and then he's supposed to come back in Morbius.
Okay. I remember
the trailer, the Morbius trailer. With Morbius is a villain, and I'm just going to do a quick thing. I believe anything that Blade is going to show up in Morbius, because
that'll be cool.
That'll be so cool, because it's going to play by Mahershala Ali. That's going to be pretty badass. Nice. But what was your thoughts? So then it does really well. Spider-Man Far From Home comes out.
Yeah, this is after the stuff with the blips that happened. I think this is after Tony Stark died, right?
I think with Spider-Man No Way Home, yes,
this is after Infinity War.
So with these Spider-Man movies, they're all part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Right.
So Spider-Man Homecoming takes place after Infinity War?
No, it's before because
it's after Civil War.
Yeah, after Civil War.
After Civil War, then Infinity War happens, and
then we get Far From Home.
Far From Home.
Yeah, because
Far From Home, everybody came back from the blip. Right.
Correct. I think this one's like sort of Iron Man's gone. He's chosen Peter to be his sort of successor. And like sort of has the control of his whole massive technology and like his.
And
defense network.
He's got his glasses.
Right. And this is like Peter struggling, like he doesn't want that much responsibility.
Yeah. And so then you have, and then he's still in high school.
Right.
And he has a school trip to Europe.
It's a fancy school.
Well, it's a comic book.
Right.
But he goes. They have and he and MJ are still trying to get it going in a relationship.
Right.
And they go to different places, and then all of a sudden, because apparently in all, if we're gonna look back at 2010 to 2020 films, and 2010, there's always like something magical in the sky that happens.
Uh-huh.
And apparently Mysterio shows up, played by Jake Gyllenhaal.
Right. And like sort of like what he's saying, like
he's Mysterio from Earth 243.
Another dimension.
Yeah. And he talks to it sort of plays it as a hero, because he like kind of reminds you of Syndrome from Incredibles.
Right.
Because Syndrome kind of has like the thing that made the robot do everything. So, but he's like, and he talks to Tony Stark. Not Tony Stark. Peter.
Right.
And he talks to Peter, and he really tries to.
It's like the whole thing is like him trying to build Peter's trust.
And then. Yeah, exactly. But what do you think of Jake Gyllenhaal? Let's talk. I know we talked about villains, but let's talk about Jake Gyllenhaal.
I thought this was another.
Because originally he was on board because in Spider-Man 2, he actually Tobey Maguire hurt his back really bad. Okay. That Jake Gyllenhaal was kind of on the cast register, the cast, kind of as a backup to play Peter Parker.
Okay.
So it was kind of nice to see him.
Okay. Yeah.
And he's got a bunch of robot machines.
Yeah,
That does,
holograms.
now the thing about Mysterio is he's the man of illusion,
right?
In the comics.
Yeah, I don't know how much they spent on like the CGI, like all the effects were quite good.
Yeah. Well, in like the comics, and actually in the comics during the time of the Civil War, they brought back Mysterio, and they said at the time they never knew what Mysterio looked like.
Right.
And apparently, when you take off the mask. It's his head, like, he's got one side of his head like this, the other side is gone. Okay. Because of all the pyrotechnics and stuff. But I liked him as Mysterio, and I liked how he's sort of slimy, but he's Jake Gyllenhaal slimy.
Right.
So he basically tells him, so Peter, like an idiot, gives him his glasses and says, it's kind of like that scene in Lost in Space where he's like, give me the gun. He's like, okay. Use gun for all users, and he's like, ha ha, you.
Right.
So he kind of realized what he's done, and he works with
sort of funny. It's like
Jarvis's Jarvis's 2.0.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is like the villain is not just Jake Gyllenhaal, it's like all the engineers that Tony Stark sort of had abused.
Yeah.
Like making all his crazy
And I think
stuff.
Jake Gyllenhaal Mysterio, Quentin Beck, excuse me, is the one that really sort of started it.
Right, yeah, but it's sort of like...
He's sort of the wingman. Because remember, once he gets Tony's tech, he's got all these like disgruntled employees that are like, who was it that told us that Tony was, who was it that, screwed us all over? And everyone's like, Stark. But then they fight.
Right.
And he does it's pretty cool. He does a lot of technical. I actually saw this movie at the Riviera. Oh. Not Riviera, the Pinnacle. And 360.
Wow.
That was pretty cool.
I didn't know they did that.
Yeah, they had a theater where it did 360. So I can remember, like, you see him coming from this side. Like, it's kind of cool. And I like the Europe ways, and I like how...
You get to see some old buildings blow up.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And I like... And then but the thing about Tom Holland's Peter Parker is you've really got to... Because he's in the cinematic universe, they put him in different, films. So at the end of Infinity War, he loses Mr. Stark, Tony Stark.
Right.
But he still becomes Spider-Man.
Right.
And I think was Far From Home? No. It was Infinity War. No, Civil War was before Homecoming. Was Infinity War before?
Yeah. So I remember, remember Spider-Man gets like blipped away.
Oh, okay.
Right. You remember?
Yeah.
So he doesn't come back until after Infinity War.
Oh, okay.
But I remember he's like, I don't feel too good thing.
Oh, yeah. And then he comes back in Endgame.
Yeah. Oh, was it Endgame? Okay, sorry. I forgot what the last movie was called.
Endgame.
Right.
And then Tony Stark dies in Endgame.
Okay, yeah.
And then, because he has that awesome, I am Iron Man.
Right.
And snaps his fingers and dies.
Okay. Well, I thought Infinity War was the last one.
No, Infinity War, Endgame was the next one. So now let's get to our crowning achievement. Spider-Man 7, or no.
Yeah, it is 7.
Spider-Man 7?
I think.
Or Spider-Man 8.
Right, 8, yeah.
Yeah, Spider-Man 8. Called Spider-Man No Way Home. So we just saw this, I guess, last week? Or before
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
Let's see what we remember. So No Way Home starts off with everyone...
It's the repercussions of Mysterio giving away his identity.
So, yeah, okay. So, at the end of Spider-Man Far From Home, Mysterio says Peter Parker is Spider-Man.
Uh-huh.
And everybody's like, Peter Parker, Spider-Man. And J.K. Simmons, J. Jonah Jameson's like, this is an outrage.
Right.
And so he goes to Doctor Strange, and and he's like, Doctor Strange, everybody knows I'm Spider-Man. Oh no, what can you do? And he's like, don't worry, Peter, I have a potion that can, or spell that can affect this, that can turn away time. And so
it's gonna make everyone forget
he's Spider-Man. And he's like, and I like it because like he's like going, everyone will forget you're Spider-Man. And he's like, what about MJ? Everyone but MJ will forget. What about Ned? Oh, Ned needs to know. Well, what about Aunt May? And he's like, everyone except these 3 people, and he pours the thing, and boom, and then of course the dimensions.
The spell messes up.
And yeah,
and sort of like Doctor Strange sort of has to try to contain the spell, and it's like, oh, we almost like destroyed this reality.
Good job, we haven't destroyed it yet. And then all of a sudden, while
he's trying to it's like, since everyone knows identity, he can't get them to college, so he's like trying to talk to the admissions lady, and then suddenly they get attacked on the bridge.
Okay, so the bridge happens. So what's cool is they're talking to the admissions lady, and she's like going, what is that sound? And and you see this.
Yeah, the
tentacles come up, and we get to see Dr. Otto Octavius back, played by Alfred Molina, in an amazing kind of a haircut to the movie, to the comic book, and with sunglasses of Peter Parker. How are you? And this is not a spoiler. It was in the trailer.
Right.
And they have this fight, and it's interesting because he's like, Peter, you don't really know why he knows he's Peter,
right? But
he doesn't know. You don't really know if it's kind of that kind of like, what's Peter Parker, or how does this Dr. Octopus know that Tom Holand is Peter Parker?
Right.
So they have this great fight where he's throwing cars and Spider-Man's saving people and swinging up the cars, because it kind of has that resemblance of Spider-Man 2 or Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man, in the same kind of scene. And they like catch him and they throw him into
Magic Prison.
And he basically, says, so who are you again?
They get a brief sighting of the Green Goblin too.
And they see and a bomb, a pumpkin bomb.
Yeah.
And that's where we get to see the Green Goblin, played again by William Dafoe.
Yeah.
And what I liked about William, I just was so cool. And you're kind of questioning why these villains from the previous films are back.
Right.
And apparently it's like their dimension.
It's like, since the spell broke, it's like everyone who knew that Peter Parker was Spider-Man from like different universes are getting transported.
Yeah. And
so
they're
like
transferred.
all the villains that knew that it was Peter Parker are getting there.
Yeah, but Peter's like going, well, this isn't my Peter. It's kind of like, and I think it's kind of like the fans going, well, this is our Peter Parker. This isn't your Peter Parker.
Right. And so then Doctor Strange is like, oh, you need to go find all the people that have come in here and sort of capture them. So Sandman shows up, played by Thomas Hayden Church. And one thing, side note, it is sort of beautiful when you look at Spider-Man 3, when he becomes Sandman. Right.
And how it was just that scene where he's trying to grab the ring, and it was but it was cool to see Thomas Hayden Church back, as Spider-Man.
Right.
I mean, that's Sandman.
right, Sandman.
So he shows up, and then Electro, Jamie Foxx, is back.
Right.
And he's not blue, which is good.
Though they do the whole, like, just briefly, they have the electricity sort of form You're talking about the video game, like
the video game.
Because
I think like in the comics, he looks like French, like lightning.
He has like lightning bolts coming off his head.
Yeah.
Or that's his costume.
Costume, yeah. But I thought it was kind of a nice sort of thing. And then you see, they catch William Dafoe, they catch the Goblin, and he's like going, you guys need to work together.
Right, so he catches like all of them. He catches the lizard, Dr. Connors.
Dr. Connors, who was the lizard in.
Sort of like, think, oh, this is going to be a pretty short thing, and then it turns out Doctor Strange is like, the way to fix this, he's going to have to send them all back to their universes where they're going to die.
Yeah, and Peter's like, no, you can't do that.
So now then he has to fight Doctor Strange.
And he's got like the box of magic.
Like sort of like the send them back to the universe box
type
thing.
And so he fights him, and then he has a fight with Doctor Strange, and Doctor Strange finally says, "You win, Peter. Fine." Right?
No, they sort of like they keep fighting, and then they sort of get into the mirror universe.
The mirrorverse, yeah. And he falls, and it's really visually pretty cool.
It's pretty good. It's like giving me a lot of what's the movie where they the dream sequence, like it doesn't matter. Inception.
Inception.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So they have to fight, and then Peter is able to best Doctor Strange by because he says it's like geometry.
Yeah.
And is able to sort of steal the box and his like magic ring, and then sort of trap him
into Peter's dimension. And Doctor Strange is like going, well, thanks a lot, you dumbass, or something.
Right.
And so what I like, and then what happens is,
so Peter's sort of he's now on a quest to try to
fix the universe, and so he and I like that, but MJ and Ned and Peter all know, and I think, and what I like about it is that they're all good people, which I think is kind of the statement with all Alfred Molina or Dr. Octopus really wasn't a villain until he got
the AI
took over. Really, Doctor and
Green Goblin had a
psychotic meltdown.
Well, he had the super soldier serum messed with his head.
Yeah, messed with his head. And then
Sandman was just trying to steal for his daughter's surgery.
Right, and then you got Electro, who doesn't want to be a nobody.
Right.
So, wish we saw this movie last night so we can remember.
So he's trying to use goes I've got this crazy Stark technology that can make all these fixes and stuff. But then suddenly, I guess for most of the movie, Green Goblin is just Harry
Osborn, and he's really, and I like what when you have them all together, all the villains together, and they, they're I think if I see it again, I'm gonna go try to figure out the pieces,
right?
But when are they going to? Because I thought when I saw it, I was like, going, okay, when are they going to turn on Peter?
Yeah, and so that does happen when the Green Goblin sort of, has a psychotic break again.
Yeah, and he turns into the Goblin again.
Right, and that's where everyone okay, we're just going to go off and, keep being their evil dudes that they are.
Yeah.
And that's where, and then there's the big fight scene where Aunt May dies.
Right.
Right. And then so...
And Ant-Man, let's talk about that, because that was kind of a real shocker, don't you?
Yeah, that was a big sort of. I guess Tom Holland's Peter has sort of been a lot more, in a way, a bit lighter. I feel like.
Well, yeah, he hasn't. The other thing about, if you look at the Spider-Man Home series, we'll call it the Home trilogy. I feel like there's never any mention of Ben Parker or Uncle Ben.
Right.
And which I always kind of felt like they could have at least, which I kind of felt two ways. One is that's good for them that they're not, that we don't have to see another Uncle Ben die,
right.
But it would have been a little bit easier if they would say, was he written out of it, or was I guess the whole becoming Spider-Man was Uncle Ben's death. You know that kind of thing.
Right.
But let's look at what do you think of Marissa before we talk about what do you think of the different Aunt Mays? Like I like how there's sort of a grandmotherly feel to Tobey Maguire's Aunt May. There's very much of a really like I kind of look at it this way, kind of a very sort of anti Aunt May, with Peter Parker with Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker, and I feel like the cool aunt was Marissa Tomei.
Right.
So, Aunt May. What was your thoughts?
I agree with that. I don't know. I thought all the Aunt Mays were pretty good. I don't know. I guess for me, just that maybe it's I like just the original Aunt May. I feel like was
the best one.
More true to the
comics.
Right.
Yeah. So but I like going back to No Way Home.
Right.
Or yeah. I kind of liked what they did. So and I liked how they go. But I liked how you had a trio. That's the one thing that you really didn't have. You kind of had a trio. You didn't, Peter Parker never really had a group of friends, and he had Harry, but there wasn't really. You couldn't really tell their relationship. Like their relationship, it
was like conflicted.
Well, it becomes conflicted right after one.
Right.
Because Harry's kind of like going, what have you been doing? Taking your pictures of your friend Spider-Man. He killed my father, and Peter's like, I'm tired of, I'm tired of convincing you that Peter died. And then it's like, oh, Butler, the Butler says, oh, by the way, I was cleaning your father's wounds, and I found out that the blade that killed him came from his glider, so Peter's off the hook. And there's that line in Wedding Singer where he goes, that would have been great if I would learn about it knew about it yesterday.
Right.
And I kind of like, and then Harry Osborn dies in Spider-Man 3, which is, at least with all the Tobey Maguire ones, it always ends in a funeral.
Right.
Or death.
Right.
But with this, let's go back to this one. But Aunt May in this one is that cool aunt.
Right.
She kind of, she feels like an aunt, not a grandma.
Right. I can see that, yeah.
And I felt like, but I felt like it was that cool, but like you felt like they were friends. So, and you could kind of, and the thing is that, but I look at Flash, then you look at Flash Thompson.
Oh, right, I forgot, yeah.
Because Flash Thompson had a big man crush on Spider-Man.
Uh-huh.
And he does in the comics. And he, if you look at it in Amazing Spider-Man 1, there is that Flash Thompson pretty much says, he loves Spider-Man but hates Peter Parker in the comics. But he's like, at the end of Spider-Man 1, Amazing Spider-Man 1 or Amazing Spider-Man 2, you can see him wear like a Spider-Man t-shirt or something. Yeah. So, but Flash is kind of, Flash is kind of a dick in the Homecoming series.
Right.
He just doesn't have any character to him.
Yeah, he's not. He's sort of.
He's not even a comic. He's a
side character.
But he doesn't have a comic relief that you're kind of like. At least we could.
No. I don't know if they really need it with. I don't know. I feel like they got that covered with. I guess Ned and like those trio there.
Yeah, kind of. You do have like a trio with them.
Right.
What was your thoughts on but let's going back to No Way Home or Far From Home.
Yeah. Or it's No Way Home.
It's No Way Home. Oh,
right.
God, I can't remember which. There's the Home 3.
Right.
It's what I like about it too is MJ or Aunt May. I heard you're having just Aunt May is like really, she really like they welcome the villains in, and you can tell the villains, they're all good people in the Spider-Man movies. They just make bad decisions.
Or bad stuff happens to them.
And this in some ways redeems them.
Right.
I mean, for a short time, but it redeems them.
Yeah.
So anyway, Spider-Man 3 so basically, but there's something, they're all working together.
Right.
The villains and Peter Parker and Peter's kind of like you really kind of tell that this is not the same Peter that they're used to.
Right.
But what I like about Electro is and I think Electro, but you want to get to where they turn, or do you want to?
Yeah, I think so. Like it sort of turns with the Green Goblin, sort of, transforms.
But Green Goblin turns, but before he turns, you really do like him,
right?
As a good. He does have some wholesomeness to him that he pulls under the rug, but there is this sort of like likable.
No, definitely. Yeah, a lot of them are likable. It just, sort of like, just sort of happens, and then so like all the villains sort of at that point sort of break off on their own, and then Aunt May dies during that fight.
So they fought. No, let's talk about the fight first.
Yeah.
So the fight takes place at their home.
Yeah, just sort of like an apartment complex.
Yeah. And Happy Hogan is has a crush on Aunt May.
Yeah, he's not my favorite character. I don't know. Is he?
Well, I mean, he's a good director.
Okay.
He directed the first Iron Man movie.
Yeah.
So I mean, I could say that why he's not. I could see why. But what I like about about Marissa Tomei is that she feels like the cool aunt.
Right.
And that she dies.
Yeah.
Did she get it? She gets impaled by the glider.
No, not I think the explosion.
Oh, the explosion killed her.
Yeah.
And this really shocks Peter.
Right.
And because I guess in some ways he's lost both Aunt May and Uncle Ben.
If you like, yeah. Oh, yeah. They're talking about like, Uncle Ben being Tony Stark. Okay.
And so he goes to. He asks Doctor Strange.
At this point, well, he's like, Ned's like, I'm gonna get revenge, and sort of goes off, and then sort of Ned and MJ are trying to find him, and then Ned has the magic ring.
MJ and I like Ned and MJ. What do you think of this MJ?
I like this. This MJ is very. I don't know.
I like her better than Kristen Dunst.
Right.
But I like that she's cool. Like I think in the first one. And like Homecoming, because Ned and Peter in like the Homecoming trilogy, the Home trilogy, they're nerds.
Right.
Like they play like bocce ball or so. I don't know. That was in 21 Jump Street. What are you guys playing bocce ball? Is that a drug? Oh, they play like But MJ, like in Spider-Man Homecoming, she says, "You guys are weird,"
right?
Kind of thing. But MJ sort of really gets into more of a relationship with Peter because I think he tries to woo her throughout the trilogy.
Right. Yeah. So Ned, like because he has like Doctor Strange's magic ring.
Yeah.
And so
he's like. Guys, please come, Peter. We need you.
Yeah,
and they say,
Peter Parker.
Peter Parker. Bum bum bum. It's Andrew Garfilled.
I don't know. So they look for another Peter Parker.
And
it's
bum bum bum. It's Tobey Maguire. And the crowd in the audience yelled and clapped.
More for Toby.
More for Toby, I think. I think Andrew, but I feel like this movie gave both of them kind of redemption.
No, I think so. Yeah, it was. Everyone was all the Peters were good.
All the Peters were good, and I think all the Peters were good in their own movies too.
Right.
But so we've got the three Peters to get together,
and then with all of them combined, are able to come up with different, cures.
Cures, and I like the scene where they're all doing sciencey stuff.
Right.
And Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire are trying to make something. Peter and then Tom Holland is working on something, and they go, "Hey, Peter!" And he goes, "Yeah," and they all say, "Yeah," and I felt like that this was a good fan base movie,
Right.
So they decide that they're gonna fight. So then they decide they're gonna fight everybody.
Right.
Which is epic.
Right.
Let's kind of talk about how epic that was.
It was very.
How was that to you? Because I think coming from somebody who was 14 when it came out in 2002 to being 24, when the second one came out, or Andrew Garfield, I felt like it was just so cool to see them all together. That was something that was just like, and I felt like there was never like this, who's the better Peter Parker?
Right.
There was never. It was always like they have all their strengths together.
Right. And it's sort of like the two older ones are sort of like passing on their wisdom and knowledge to Tom Holland.
Yeah. But you don't really feel like, and Andrew Garfield brought that wit. Tobey Maguire brought that sincerity.
Right.
And Tom Holland, I never really felt like they're, when you look at Batman, everybody says, who's the best Batman? Well, it's Keaton. Ben Affleck. Oh, well, Ben Affleck was, now that we've seen him in Justice League, he's the best part of, this one, I think they all brought something to it.
No, I agree.
So, anyway, they all come together.
Statue of Liberty.
In a Statue of Liberty fight. And it's awesome.
Yeah.
So let's go into this. So they're fighting each other, and all the villains get together too.
Right.
And so
now it's sort of a mayhem, and it's like for a good while it looks like the Spider-Man's going to beat back until they sort of can regroup and sort of like fight as a team.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's sort of where they.
And they regroup, and then like they're all doing sciencey stuff.
Yeah. And I guess the big thing, like the other two Spider-Mans are trying to pass on to Tom Holland's, is like you can't like be driven too much by revenge.
Yeah.
Because they've all lost, Gwen and their Uncle Ben's and stuff.
Yeah.
And how much they've regretted that. So they're trying to talk him out of killing the Green Goblin.
Yeah. And Green Goblin, and God, can we just give William Dafoe?
Yeah.
He was so great.
I know.
As the Green, just to bring it back and just to bring that energy.
Yeah.
19 years later.
I know, that's crazy.
Yeah. But I don't know. Was this the best Spider-Man movie?
Oh man, potentially.
I think because they brought them all together, and I think because they worked off each other.
Yeah.
I think that's what made it good. You never really felt. I felt like this was the third, but it also felt like really felt like the
third for
Tom Holland.
Yeah, Andrew Garfield.
Third for Andrew Garfield, and fourth for Tobey Maguire.
Yeah. It's sort of a redeeming.
So let's do our ratings. If you were to rate all Spider-Man films,
if I was to rate all of them, I probably would do No Way Home, probably as my number one. Then I probably could do it back with the
original Spider-Man.
Then maybe Homecoming next. I don't know.
I would probably do No Way Home, or No Way Home would probably be the first one, just because I think of its epic scale.
Yeah.
I think people will look at, and I also think that people will look at No Way Home as sort of like, a great film. Like not like I mean a good film for Marvel. For Marvel.
Yeah, for Marvel. Yeah.
You know, I felt like it's epic, but it doesn't feel too much like. I felt like because you brought them together and they worked off, each Peter Parker worked off one another.
Right.
That's what makes it good. Whereas I felt like I never felt like, oh, who's the better Peter? You know, it's not like Batman where you're like, you know, Keaton, Clooney,
Right.
Kilmer. I like this one. I feel like it worked great. I like the fact they brought the lizard back.
Right.
And I liked how.
I still sort of think that Dr. Ock and Green Goblin sort of overpowered all the other villains.
Yeah, I do think that, but I thought that they all sort of brought something to. That's the other thing too, is I felt like you kind of had the heroes, and they brought something to each of them. You never really felt like, oh, Toby was better than Garfield. Garfield was better, you know. But Tom was the best one, or Tom was as good as Toby. Toby, you know, they all brought some. I think, as a cluster, both the villains in one hand and the heroes in another hand, they all came together.
Right.
So, I would give from me, I would go. No Way Home, the first one, is my first one. Oh. Spider-Man 1, because I think it was the most daring. I think Amazing Spider-Man, because it was the most...
Okay.
Or Spider-Man 2. Amazing Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man Homecoming. Spider-Man Far From Home. And Spider-Man 3.
Spider-Man 3 is your last.
3 just wasn't... I felt like 3 just needed to be written better. Yeah. Or it just needed some work. You know, it was too many cooks in the pot. But, you know, yeah, so that's now I'm going to give my scale, my rating scale. Okay. I'd give it an 89 or 90, 98 for No Way Home.
Wait, 89 or 98?
98.
Okay, I was going to say like 95 because like, that is pretty.
No, I mean, I'll give it a 98. And I think just because I think as a cluster of a trilogy, like a series, if you looked at all 8 Spider-Man movies, I'll give it an A+. Like all.
Yeah.
What about you, Jay?
I think I'd give this one a 95.
95.
It was quite good.
95 for No Way Home? Or,
yeah. For No Way Home.
No Way, yeah. I'd give it. Yeah, I think it was good. I think it's the best. I would say. I mean, there are. I think probably the whole like Doctor Strange stuff felt. I mean, it looks like it's bringing us into Doctor Strange 2.
Right.
So, and you'll actually see a trailer for Doctor Strange 2. But then the other thing too is you get to see Peter kind of adulting now.
Getting ready for college. This is like him.
This is his Spider-Man 2.
Yeah, where he's sort of like, you know, not. Yeah.
You know.
He's growing up.
Yep. Anyway, that is us for talking about Spider-Man. Thank you guys for listening. If you would like, you can like it and subscribe. I'm Steve.
I'm Jay.
And you guys have a good one, and don't get bit by any radioactive spiders. Bye.
Bye.